Hello and welcome. We're going to go into housekeeping first before Susie introduces herself and our guest today. If you wiggle your mouse over the Q&A button, you can open the Q&A panel. Susie will be keeping an eye on the Q&A panel and managing the questions and answers today. So as we go through the conversation and discussion, please do add your Qs and Susie will try to do the As throughout the webinar. Yes, of course, we're recording this webinar, and so you'll be able to review it soon after. We will email you individually with the video. Hopefully you're sitting comfortably and listening via computer, but should you struggle with the audio for any reason, you can mute the Zoom audio and dial in with the telephone number that was emailed to you exactly an hour ago. So thank you for joining us. I'm going to hand you over to our host today, Suzie Robinson of ClearBox Consulting.
Thank you very much, Wedge. Hello, everybody. I can still see a few people coming in, so in case you missed it, a quick reminder, wiggle your mouse, find the Q&A panel, and please do share questions with us, and I'll put them to Martin and Rebecca, who will introduce themselves shortly in a minute. As Wedge said, my name is Suzie Robinson. I am a consultant with ClearBox Consulting. I've worked in the world of intranets for many years now. I don't really like to think about the number if I can help it, and I joined ClearBox about 5.5 years ago now. I look after our range of reports, so you may be familiar with ClearBox because of those, but we also work with different businesses of different shapes and sizes to do things like strategy and governance and community sponsorship, all that sort of stuff. And we've worked with different shapes and sizes of organisations like Electrolux, Loves Travel Stops, Girls' Day School Trust, Skanska, DVLA, and even the Royal British Legion. So that's us. I'd like to hand you over briefly to our participants, our panellists today. So welcome, Rebecca and Martin. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Yes, hi, thanks for having us. I'm Rebecca Ryce. I'm the Digital Enablement Lead at the Scottish Funding Council.
Hello everyone, thank you Suzie and thank you Rebecca. Thanks Wedge for teeing us up, and yeah, it's great to be here. I'm Martin Stubbs-Partridge, Internal Comms Lead at the Scottish Funding Council, and yeah, I've been also working in the world of intranets for more years than I can remember.
We've also known each other for quite a while, Martin and I. Rebecca is a new acquaintance, so it's nice to meet you, Rebecca, properly and have a good chat today. And Rebecca, would you like to just explain what the SFC is for those who maybe don't know?
Sure. So the first thing to know is that we're a non-departmental public body. So what that means is we're sort of an arm's reach agency from the Scottish Government. So we get all of our budget from the Scottish Government, they set the kind of direction, but we're independent. So we are Scotland's tertiary education and research authority. So our purpose is to sustain a world-leading system of tertiary education, research and innovation, and enable students to flourish, change lives for the better, and support social, economic, and environmental well-being and prosperity. That is the last time I'll read from this slide, don't worry. But that's the official spiel. So we've got a very, very broad remit. But the long and the short of it is that we fund and sort of regulate the universities and colleges in Scotland.
It's an incredibly vital service because you are indirectly helping the students, the kind of the grown-ups of tomorrow, as it were. So what you're doing now is really vital service that you're offering. And SFC, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. So I'm going to start just having a chat. SFC is going through a very big transformational process at the moment, and that's the reason why we've asked you to come along today and have a chat. There's all sorts of things that you've been doing, a lot of successes you've been having already in the last 18 months of working on this. Rebecca, would you like to also set the scene for us, just to give us a little bit of context of what you've been up to, what the trigger has been, why you are doing a big transformational project in the first place?
Sure. So we have sort of transformation nested within transformation, nested within transformation. So it's a proper little Matryoshka doll. We've got, at the core, for what's relevant here, is the internal comms transformation. What triggered that is a few different threads. Basically, we, like I'm sure many people here, our organisation has a biannual staff survey, and our kind of executive team do take that very seriously. One of the pieces of feedback from the last survey a couple of years ago was internal communications not being great. So staff were telling exec team, we don't hear from you enough, we don't know what's happening at higher levels, like that leadership communication is just not great. And that's basically what led to Martin's post being created. So that was very clear, this is not great, we're going to create a whole post dedicated to improving internal communications, strong action point. Beyond that, like many organisations, we have only really recently adopted hybrid working. So we're only 170-ish employees, all in the same time zone, all desk workers, previously all working in an office in Edinburgh. And now we're kind of spread across the UK. We primarily work from home. I go into the office a handful of times a year nowadays. So that transition occurred because of the lockdowns when we were not ready for it. And our communications had not kept up to pace with it. So a lot of communication was quite informal. We had genuine water cooler moments in the office because that's what happens when you're small and all co-located, and that was gone. So that really introduced a lot more silos, which had to be addressed. At the same time, we were going through general digital transformation, the first phase of that being remediation, because we have had serious underinvestment in our technology stack. And we're carrying like 10, 20 years of technology debt in certain areas. So there was all this remediation work happening. The intranet always had to get redone because it did not work for a hybrid workforce. Literally, on a technical stance, it did not work. They had to turn it off when people started working from home. So the comms team at the time quickly spun up a few pages they could host that people could access, but that was it. A couple of pages, a couple of links, no intranet. So that was always on the backlog that we have to go back to rebuild that in a way that's going to work. So yeah, we had the digital transformation, that adjusting to being a hybrid workforce. And then also in the much broader context, we had a new CEO at the time when this kicked off. We just had another new CEO now. So there's broader organizational transformation occurring. And then beyond that, there is government transformation. So we're going through tertiary education and skills reform. The government is kind of putting legislation through just now to change quite a lot of foundational pieces of our work. One of the big things being that we're going to take on provision of apprenticeships from Skills Development Scotland. So there's proper structural legislative reform happening. So from the micro to the macro, something had to be done on communications and had to get done ASAP because all this other change is happening, and how are we going to keep people abreast if we weren't doing it well previously when things were a wee bit more static? How are we going to do it now when capacity is so stretched and change is the only constant? So I think that was the trigger. Martin came in. Here you go, Martin. This is the legacy you've got. Get cracking.
And so, Martin, coming into that then, so that it sounds like not only was change identified as being needed right at the start of this process, but throughout this entire process, it sounds like there's been quite a lot of change that's continued on through. Have you found that the original goals that you came into the organisation to address, that this project is addressing, have they shifted or have they remained fairly constant, and it's retained that kind of core of internal comms being needed with all of this other contextual stuff going on?
One of the first things, in fact, even during my interview, one of the first things I said that I would do when I joined the organisation was develop an internal communication strategy, and that strategy needed to draw together all of the big priorities to ensure that people didn't see internal comms as another thing that we needed to do. I think I prefer to see internal communications as a service, and that it helped to stitch together all the other services. And I think in reality, that's kind of what happened. I think that the internal comms strategy has helped other service leads to make sense of that transformational change. So, whether it's HR, IT, information governance, etc., we've helped to bring all of those service leads together to then redesign and design an internal communication service that helps to make sense of all of those different things. Because ultimately, everything we're doing at work is a task. Whether I'm filling out a form, whether I'm reading a piece of information, whether I'm collaborating with somebody on a networking platform, whether I'm trying to do my flexi leave, whatever it might be, all of these things are things that are taking me away from my my core purpose, my job. So to see those things in the round and then to design a set of services and eventually digital channels to facilitate those in the flow of your work is ultimately the USP that I brought in to the organisation. So really seeing beyond the lens of communication as a thing, and I think that's perhaps what's worked well for us, that we've just seen it You know, internal comms isn't a thing in itself. It's a means to an end. You know, what matters is that you can go and do your job really easily, and that you can just keep yourself up to speed and engage with people really easily without thinking about it.
Okay, that's a really key kind of objective, I think, is to put employees at the heart of what it is you're designing, and to think beyond internal comms as a thing, as you say. And Rebecca, kind of going back to what you were talking about earlier as well, where you said you had all employee comms survey, which identified that internal communications was a need, and that goal that Martin's just referenced about putting the employees really at the heart of what it is you're doing. What other discovery work did you do to identify the best way to move this project forward? Has it been something that you've repeated as well as the project has gone on?
That's a good question, and one I could talk about at extreme length, because I am a researcher at heart. That's where I started my career. So user research is my favorite place to be. So we did quite a lot. We were actually very lucky, I feel, looking back now, that we got the time and the resource and the go ahead to do like the depth of discovery we did at the beginning of the strategy work. So discovery, there was 3 strands to the initial discovery phase for the strategy work. One was focus groups with staff, and that the aim of that was to figure out what's it like to work here. Because like Martin said, we wanted to take a really broad lens with internal communications and try and design services that work kind of in the flow of people's work. So it's not just about, we weren't just asking them like, what's it like to get newsletters from the exec and things. It was very broad about like, what is it like to work here? What are you doing on a day-to-day basis? Where are your challenges? You know, where's your pain points, things like that. So that told us what it's like to work here. Then we did an all-staff survey just on communication preferences, but rather than again asking these kind of rational questions of, do you prefer email or IM or whatever, I was trying to build a persona. So I used sort of dimension scales to try and figure out where staff were sitting across different dimensions, like whether they want to participate, what kind of tone they prefer, whose responsibility did they see communications being. And from that, we did a cluster analysis to create a segmentation for those personas. So we've got 2 nice kind of staff personas, cats and dogs is what we've called them for ease. They're in the slide, there's some information in the slide deck if you want to have a look. We have quite a lot of fun with them. They sort of break down to, there's more nuance to it, but sort of introverts and extroverts are the 2 groups of people you're working with. Dogs want to share and they want to hear everything that's going on, and they're a bit informal, and they're just excited and, you know, great people to do things like Viva Engage with, for example. Whereas cats, a bit more reserved, not really wanting to share, but they want to like read in their own time things that are happening. They don't care that much about stuff that doesn't immediately affect them. So we had those 2 audiences in mind then of that piece of work. And then the final piece in this phase was to benchmark how we're comparing to other sectors. So once we finished that, we could say, okay, these are the problems at work that internal comms will hopefully help address. These are who we're working with. This is our audience that we have to serve. And here's how we compare to best practice. Mm-hmm. That was phase 1.
That was phase 1. Wow, that's a good amount of research, and an approach actually that we at ClearBox, we take a similar one as well. So you're not asking people specifics and asking more about that kind of general behaviours. And when you were doing this kind of initial discovery phase of research, was there anything that surprised you that came up?
Ooh. I feel like I'm now too entrenched in the organization that no. I was like, yes, because I'm an employee too. So I share a lot of the similar, I know the pain points that are common across the organization. But it's always good to have quotes from other people rather than just me harping on with problems. That's one of my favorite parts of any user research. When someone says something, I'm like, yes, I can quote that, and I can say, look, a different user said this, a senior one, or an on-the-ground officer, or someone, not just me.
We're not just gossiping, it's real.
Yeah. So no, I don't think anything did, but I don't know, Martin, if anything surprised you coming in, because that was probably one of your first times meeting a lot of staff.
I think one of the joyous moments of this is the fact that it was you and I asking very open questions, and I think we got a lot of emotion came out during some of those sessions, a lot of frustration, a lot of emotion. It was almost the opposite of your formal HR people survey, you know, that's written or the questions are asked in a certain way. This was 2 colleagues sitting in front of you, genuinely asking What are the challenges that you face? And we did pick up a few things actually. And one of those was like the office Wi-Fi, which of course was nothing to do with internal comms directly. And we were able to start feeding these things back even during the discovery phase to say, listen, we've heard this is a problem. What are we doing about it? And okay, it's taken us a while to resolve some of these problems, but nevertheless, we genuinely just started to play back quote cards and stuff to our senior management team constantly throughout this discovery phase to say, listen, there's no hiding from this, because actually some of the peers that have come in at your level recently into the organization are also saying these things. So there was no hiding. And I think that was one of the things that really the executive team took on board, that we asked open questions, we got honest answers, and then we were able to start turning those things around and wrapping them up in strategic objectives to say, okay, these are the things that we can help with.
Do you think that that honesty with them has helped with your change management program? Because there's been so much change happening over quite a long period of time. Has that openness and honesty continued throughout, would you say?
I would like to think so. And I don't believe you can change anybody. At the end of the day, I think people make their own decisions about what they wish to. Do they come on this journey with you? Or are you designing to meet absolutely every single one of their needs? Or are there things that you could be as Rebecca pointed out to me last week, you can be user-centered, but it needs to be business-led. So there's tactics between those two sometimes that you need to deploy. And one of those tactics, we've just been very honest, very open, and we've provided lots of opportunity to play these results back. Even during when we were developing the strategy, we ran what we call sort of flash sessions, which are sort of like this, where colleagues come together and share what they're doing. We played back those results to our senior management colleagues. We played back those results then to all staff. And then as we started to work out what are the platforms that we needed to roll out to help us, deliver these strategic objectives, we got people very much involved, in the implementation of those as well. So I think being very honest and open from the strategic get-go has actually brought people with us. And I think that's the phrase that I use. We go together, and I keep reinforcing that message. I can't bring everybody with us, but we're providing you the opportunities to get involved as much as you possibly can. So by the time these things do launch, then actually there's no surprises for you.
That's a really nice, again, a really nice approach to take when it comes to all of this change, is to bring people with you, or you're moving along together, even if you don't necessarily bring them the whole way. Rebecca, what other change management approaches have you taken? How have you tried to make sure people do come along for that journey?
Honestly, our approach to change management is mostly, I feel, just common sense. So we don't sit down with a framework. We probably are going to start doing that with the legislative reform piece in the organisation. But for our work, we weren't addressing a certain framework. In hindsight, you could say we were following ADCAR. But for me, I feel like we can change people. I'm determined to change every single individual person and bring them all along, because it's much demoralising sometimes in my day-to-day work. That's my aim. But I have a master's in health psychology and a bachelor's in psychology, which focuses on behavior change, very specifically. So I think I've sort of internalized the COMBI model, which is a health behavior change model fundamentally, where you address capability, opportunity, and motivation. And there's a behavior change wheel that sits behind that, or sort of on top of it. So I don't reference it specifically. I don't have a copy of it in a file somewhere at work, but that's what I've internalized. And so I'm always thinking about, well, capability and opportunity are the easy ones, right? That's things you can physically do. That's training, that's guidance documents, making that easy. The intranet is one of these ones that makes it easier for all the other projects, because now you can say, where do we put these guidance documents? They're on the intranet, in the learning center, and on the project page, and linked across, which is one of the reasons the intranet is such a central part of our transformation strategy. So capability, that's easy. I love training. I do a lot of training with staff. I produce or facilitate a lot of guidance. Opportunity, kind of similar, but that's giving people space and time where you can to actually put these new skills or tools or behaviors, whatever it is, into practice. So I think every project we've done in this kind of ballpark has had drop-in sessions, guided things. People come to me one-on-one for all sorts across kind of the Microsoft toolkit to show, like, to ask how to do things. So there's a lot of opportunity. Motivation is the one that's the hardest to address, because ultimately that is down to the individual. So that's where you try and do things like showing them the benefit of the change and highlighting how this is going to be so good for you. And it's so easy. Like, we're not going to ask you to, learn some really advanced skill. We're designing it for you. So yeah, that's was always thinking in my head in the background. I'm applying those frameworks. This is why education is so wonderful. It's just internalized. Just internalize that one.
Yeah, excellent. Common sense. I think that's my favorite approach to change management as well, to be honest, and project management as well. It just makes your life so much easier because you can be that much more flexible. You and Martin, you've both mentioned quite a few platforms now. So Martin, I'm going to come back to you and ask you, how did you decide which of the platforms that were already in existence, that are available in this massive marketplace? How did you go about deciding the right ones, and what are the ones that you have chosen for SFC?
So one of the first things that I realised is that we did have this black hole as a team, not only in communications but also as an organisation. So before I arrived, the comms team had been designing an intranet, which, funnily enough, they were just going to launch. And then on the very first meeting that I joined, I started asking questions such as, where does the need come from? Who's been involved in this, etc. And it was always a copy and paste of what we had, and it's just gone on SharePoint. But we pivoted that to become an interim solution. And the reason why I wanted it to become an interim solution, because I wanted to learn how people were interacting with it as we were doing the strategy. And as the strategy was starting to unfold, we were then able to use the current platform to meet some of those tactical needs. So, for example, moving the chief executive from our chief executive at the time, from email once a week to a digital blog, for example, once a week, then started to bring people into the digital world, etc. And a lot of things then sort of went from there. And we were then able to sort of increase that simplify that change piece, because we were already doing some of those things, irrespective of whether we were using the right platform or not. In terms of choosing the right platform, after the internal comm strategy, we then did a technical options appraisal, which I led, and I extensively used the ClearBox report actually to help us identify some of the technologies, but also initially perhaps some of the vendors and the platforms that I could bring in to help demonstrate what the future might look like, even prior to procurement. So we did that. But the options approach really kind of ended up with doing two things. We needed a tool that amplified leadership and facilitated engagement, and we needed a tool that seamlessly interacted with that, really, and to ensure that people could then do the corporate stuff, complete the task, read the news, find a policy, and all that sort of thing. And we, in the end, decided to go down a platform that was an intranet platform, and we decided to go for a SharePoint-based platform ultimately, but one that perhaps that also lived out in the cloud as a SaaS product. So we ended up going with Viva Engage for our engagement network, and we went for a licensed version. We rolled it out over 2 phases. Firstly, to help people learn in the crowd to begin with, so just to get used to working in communities and becoming part of that, a digital community. And then secondly, more importantly, we rolled out the licensed version for things like leadership corner campaigns, etc. So we were then able to leverage the power of the licensed version to amplify our leaders' voice, and we use storylines as the means of doing that. So, and that's the thing that we've taken our time with this. So we are very, very clear that storylines is a leadership channel with a big L. Communities are an engagement channel, and anybody as an individual, irrespective of your grade, can get involved, obviously, in all of those things. And then campaigns, we're sort of starting to get our teeth into a little bit for running things such as Carers Week or annual reports and that sort of thing. So we're starting to get into that. But yes, the leadership was a particular hook for Viva Engage. when we came out of once alongside rolling out phase 2 of Viva Engage, we killed ourselves by also doing the intranet procurement. So at the same time, we ran that ITT, and we ended up with working in partnership with Corporate Service Solutions, CPS, as our delivery partner, and Omnia as our software partner. And we're currently now very close to the point of rolling that out.
Great, thank you. And you're being very kind, and you're going to give us a very quick tour of where you're at. So while Martin wrestles with Zoom to try and get it all sharing, because we know how all these different companies like putting the share buttons in different places and some such. Rebecca, do you want to give us just a little kind of update of where you are right now? What have you done? What are you just about to do whilst Martin shares his screen and gets ready to give us that tour?
Sure. So we finished sort of what I've called usability testing, but 2 weeks ago now. So we had our sort of UAT testing, UAT with the vendor, and technical testing, checking if it's meeting our requirements, as in the procurement exercise. But separately, I also ran what I call kind of usability and sort of usefulness testing, is how I phrased it to the testers internally with a pilot group. So recruited, a group of testers from across the organization, different directorates, different levels, and I gave them a task to do, which would take them around all the different features of the intranet. So it was sort of a guided role play where I said, it's your first day at work. Like, well, congratulations, welcome to SFC. You've got some onboarding stuff to do on the intranet. Off you pop, go and find it, give us feedback. Or you've got to read this, or you've got to watch this video, that kind of thing. So I tried to create a sort of a realistic user journey that would take people through to check, is this what you like? Is this meeting your requirements? So we tweeted that a few weeks ago and got some really constructive feedback. I guess, like you were saying earlier, that honesty certainly has been continuing, because people were not, were very open with their feedback, which is what you want when you're testing things. There's no point in people being polite and saying, oh yes, it's fine, I'm never going to use this feature. But so we've done that, gave that report over to Martin and reported some of any technical issues to our partner. And Martin has been busy making some changes based on that feedback.
Amazing stuff. Martin, we can see your screen, so I'll hand back over to you if you want to give us a little bit of a tour for, say, next 10 minutes. Ooh, and for some reason, though, your microphone has gone onto mute.
I am hopefully sharing a slide here.
You are,
at the
yes.
moment. Yeah, great. So I just wanted to share this before I dive into the internet, because I think these are, in essence, the 5 corporate objectives that we're sort of designing against. So we want to make sure that colleagues are aligned with our vision and mission. We want to make sure that people have an understanding of what their roles and responsibilities are. And key to this has been designing a channel matrix. And we developed this just before we rolled out Viva Engage to make sure that people were really clear around the difference between Teams and Viva Engage, for example, and an intranet. So this is the channel matrix that we designed, and you'll get that if you download the pack afterwards. We wanted to make sure that there was a shift towards just pushing things out towards engagement, and this was backed up by our content strategy. So we've got a multi-level content strategy, which is essentially the intranet almost is the base, is the push and pull of all of that. And when we get up into multi-directional around teams and engagement and collaboration, and we get to the top, we might be face-to-face, or we might be doing things immersively, eventually in Copilot, for example. We've got that pyramid structure for our content strategy. So we're very clear about which of those platforms do what. And then I think the really key one, which I've been so fortunate to bring in to the organization, is the employee experience bit. So this is the thing that wraps around all of what we're doing. And I wanted to make that clear, because what we're trying to do across our platforms is design the experience. So whether I'm on the website, whether I'm on Teams, whether I'm in the intranet, whether I'm in Viva Engage, I have a sense of being in SFC. And that goes beyond the the color purple for our header, because that matches the website. It goes beyond the brand pack, for example. It moves into the use of iconography, for example. So we're using across all of our designs the same icons. One of the things we also want to try and do is to help with the flow of communication. So we start to break down the, okay, this is the news, and this is an event, and actually, if I miss an event, what do I do? Do I go and catch up? How do I catch up? Because we've never been able to do that before. We've only recently started to record, for example, our leadership briefings. So the intranet just needed to be a way of seamlessly enabling people to get from A to B. So it is, it is designed to do that. It is not flashy. It is not fancy. It is absolutely accessible and inclusive. We've worked very hard. Our website, for example, has a 95% accessibility rating, WAG 2.0, and we've taken those principles and applied it to the website, to the intranet. So that's why you see things are the way they are. They are designed. It's very, very simple. So for the example, we've also
We've lost you ever so slightly, Martin. I don't know if you're
page.
Your camera off while you talk it through.
I'm not going to show you. With that sort of stuff, but this is an executive and one of our board members, so we've now, but again, so I can, seamlessly, due to the metadata behind. Am I here? Sorry, am I not coming through very strongly?
Yeah, I think the video might be killing you slightly, or the.
Oh right, okay.
Did you want to turn your video off just while you talk it through, and let's see if that sorts out the connectivity.
Let's do that.
So
is that any better?
Yeah, that sounds like it might be. Let's give it a
better.
go again.
Brilliant. Yeah. So we're using metadata extensively behind the site to ensure that whether I'm in a news article, I'm getting the relevant policy might be applied to that. Whether I'm watching a recording, that I'm getting the relevant story that might go with that, for example. And then we're using, for example, things like our graphics extensively on Viva Engage. We use these for every single one of our communities. We have graphics that apply to those communities, so we're using those extensively. We're moving away from a team-based architecture to one which is more active. So, for example, if you need to support yourself as a colleague around, what public and privilege holidays do I know, or do I need to know, then you can browse and search based on categories and topics, as opposed to, oh, well, it's HR and it might be to do with, absence and sickness. It's that inclusive architecture. So it doesn't matter whether you've been here 20 years or 1 week. If you've got a question, you can begin to pick that up really easily. And because we're very fortunate that one of my colleagues, Paddy, is an expert in design, they are able to bring that expertise in. For example, this page is accessible to people who suffer from dyslexia, for example. So it's much easier to understand icon-based lists compared to just a static list, which you can also download from here if you wish to. So there's a whole bunch of different, I'm not going to go through all of the sort of all of our how do I's, but you can see that we're starting to move away from what to where do I go, to what do I do, and where and what are the things I need to understand. So we've got that's it's all very straightforward and very easy to understand. For the first time, we've also got a directory. The site is designed to be MVP at the moment. We're still doing a lot of technical stuff in the background, which Rebecca has alluded to. So we still have an on-prem to cloud service at the moment in terms of Active Directory. So we are, we're doing a lot of work in the background to integrate our HR system with Entra ID to ensure that works seamlessly. So if you want to update you need to update your record, you do that in one place in the HR system, and then that data then flows neatly, automatically through into the intranet. So this is a fairly basic search tool for the staff directory just at the moment, and then we've got things like an automated organization chart. We've also got some fun areas. So for example, this is one of Rebecca. So Rebecca is one of our community moderators for the SFC radio. So this is one of our communities that we have on Viva Engage, and we felt it was really important, for example, that once a week, Rebecca can say a bit more about this, but essentially once a week, colleagues choose a playlist on Viva Engage. They send in their recommendations based on a theme that Rebecca puts forward, and then every week you can see that those are then sent out to colleagues. And then we've now created a library, a weekly library of those playlists, whether you're on Spotify or Apple, that you'll then be able to go and just browse for. If you want the SFC radio playlist, then you can go and neatly get those. So these are some of the things that we just wouldn't have been able to do previously. So these are just HTML embed codes in here that are bringing back that content from Spotify.
Rebecca, I am going to have to ask you a little bit more about that. Where did that come from? Why did that come about? That's very unusual. I've not seen something like that before.
I'd love to say it was my idea. No, my first job, one of my colleagues had this. There was basically a dispute over whether we should or should not have music playing in the office, because we'd been through a merger, and the company I worked for originally were like, no, we're working, no music. And then our company were like, we have to have music. So we agreed that on a Friday afternoon we would play music. So one of my colleagues would suggest a theme, and people would put in some suggestions, and then we'd play that on a tiny Bluetooth speaker in the office once a week. So I don't know why that stuck with me. I don't know why it came back to me, but I thought it'd be fun when we introduced Viva Engage, because Viva Engage is supposed to be sort of more social. It's not supposed to be essential work activities going on. Like, obviously we post all of our latest news, and there's a great place for people post summaries about like topics in the education sector and stuff. So obviously it is all work relevant, but it's not essential stuff. So I thought radio would be fun. It's not really radio. I know it's misnamed because no one's live, but this is really just my chance to pretend to be a radio host. I'm hoping one day the BBC are going to pick up on this, because it's quite popular. We're doing very well. And in all seriousness, it's genuinely a very good way to engage with colleagues that you would not in any other circumstance. So every week we have our regulars who post submissions, and we have a wee chat about the merits of their choice and so on, and it's just quite fun. And I think it suits the purpose of Viva Engage very well, which is to make people feel a sense of belonging, sense of collaboration, sense of engagement at the organisation. And some weeks
that hybrid world that you've already mentioned as well, the fact that it's not just people you wouldn't normally speak to, you're all working from home potentially, or shared office spaces, or wherever else it might be. So it's a fantastic idea. Yeah,
it's good. I mean, I feel like music brings people together. The idea is we're all working apart, but if we all tune in to listen to the playlist, I've not got to the point of properly syncing people up with a jam session, but if you say, we're going to, we post it on a Thursday, you can listen to it in the afternoon or Friday morning. It brings a sense of us all being together. And yeah, it's good fun.
I've just seen a question come up from Julie, actually. Have you got any stats on the engagement rate with your radio chats or anything? Or is that a nice segue for Viva Engage more generally?
I'm sure Martin will happily talk about stats for Viva Engage generally. There are stats for your community. I'm not sure I've had a look at them, but I'll pull it up and see. It's certainly a small gang of people posting regularly.
I think you're getting in the region of sort of 50 odd views, but then again you've got a relatively small community, haven't you? So you're getting around not far off 100% engagement each week with those posts.
There you go. Thank you, Martin. Yeah, so about a quarter of the organisation is part of the radio community, and apparently they're all staying very well engaged, which is lovely. We've not struggled to make a playlist every week, I can say that much. And some weeks when work is rubbish, as it sometimes is, it's just a nice thing to bring a wee smile to your face. Be like, do you know what? I'm just going to go away and see what so is said about.
Amazing, thank you. Sorry, Martin, we got segued by music.
It's fine. I just wanted to touch on something else that Rebecca leads on, which nicely plays into our what we're calling our sort of catch-up service that's hosted within the Learning Centre, and there's a reason why we're doing that. So Rebecca leads on something called shared learning, and again Rebecca can come back and talk about that in a moment. But we've almost got 3 different types of internal events that we run. Shared learning is one of them, where Rebecca is essentially sharing her learning out to the organisation with all things Microsoft and tech. We then have what are called flash sessions, where colleagues share their own experiences and learning, and sometimes we bring in guests as well to share their learning with us. And these recordings are now available in a library on the new intranet. And then we have the one that I just showed you earlier on, where we're now bringing all staff together sort of once a month to get a briefing from the chief executive around, you know, what the board was talking about. And then we've now bringing board members in to talk about those things directly. So we've got that strategic engagement, we've got that peer-to-peer engagement, and then we've got engagement such as Rebecca does, where she's passing on her knowledge. And I think one of the really nice things that we've been able to do is merge, for example, the shared learning material that Rebecca has been producing with what we might well, you know, call usual stuff. So, you know, guidance around, you know, how to use our HR system, or guidance around how to use Dynamics, or guidance around how to use the Flexi system, for example. So we're breaking down those silos of the HR team do this, and the digital team do that, and the comms team do the other, into just creating a library of resources that might well have been captured via a Teams meeting. And this is an instance of that. So this is the Microsoft Stream one. Whoops, looks like the menu has gone slightly around. We're working on that at the moment. But nevertheless, that Teams recording then turns into a resource for the long term that is then available and re-available on the intranet.
That bringing down of silos, is that partly how you've seen a huge amount of success with Viva Engage as well? So I know, is it Microsoft has said, I'm going to have to look at a piece of paper to double check this. So Microsoft has said that you're in the top 25% of companies using Viva Engage. So you must be up against some huge organizations, or some that have had it in for a very long time. What do you think that actually means for you? What do you think that is an indicator of?
I think we have to take that figure with a pinch of salt, and I'm just totally honest about that. That 25% is in essence, has a member of staff been onto Viva Engage since they gained an account, and have they interacted with the platform? So Microsoft use that as a sort of, you know, a nice throwaway statistic. So in itself, you know, it might sound great, but it's not a brilliant stat. I think what's most important to me is that we're getting, for example, 90% reach with our chief executive communications. When she posts on Viva Engage, we are getting, you know, up to 90% reach with some of those things. We are getting equally high reach when other members of the senior leadership team post to their storylines. And that's because we really understand what we're trying to achieve with the platform. We've designed, you know, even though anybody can use storylines, we know we've specified that as the leadership channel. And of course, behind the scenes, you can assign things like, you can give particular members in the leadership corner, you can give them a particular audience group. And in this case, we've given them, you know, all staff. So for example, we know that when a member of the SLT post on Viva Engage, it triggers a notification into your team's activity bell. And that's great, because it means that, you know what, you can say you no longer need to start pushing the stuff out for email, because the technology will do the work for you, and we describe where you can go and collect that. So we no longer need to start pushing out leadership comms in other channels, because we've designed the channel to work, and it's got a specific purpose, and it's doing its job.
I think for me, the sort of success of Viva Engage shows that we were right, that there was a need for it, ultimately. So when we did our benchmarking, collaboration and kind of enterprise social were some of our lowest scores. And from our segmentation, we could see that we approximately about half the organization were dogs who want to share their updates. And but they were saying in focus groups as well, we don't really know where, and we don't know if there's an appetite for it. But I'd like to say, we went to this event this week and here's what we learned, it was great, or oh, like, well done to someone for doing X, Y, and Z. So we kind of, when we launched it, we had confidence there was enough people who were going to be posting, and that also the other half, those cats, were going to want to check in every so often and lurk a wee bit and maybe like a post and stuff. So yeah, the fact that that has played out, I think, shows that our discovery phase was correct, and that we did pick ultimately the right tool for that unmet need. And also it was in some cases it was a case of shifting people just to a better channel, because there were teams that existed previous to this that we said, actually, Viva Engage is probably more appropriate for this type of thing. It's a bit more open, whereas Teams is closed off. It's, you know, it's got a better interface for these types of conversations. So in some cases we shifted people away from using Teams for this type of update to Viva Engage.
I've got two questions that have come in from folks in the audience, and I want to tackle those, I think, and then we can come back to talking about some of the results a little bit more. And Martin, feel free to keep showing us bits and pieces, because I'm sure that everybody is like me and likes nerding out with intranet. So feel free to keep your screen sharing. Maya asks, how have you addressed maintenance of sites, pages, materials, etc.? So around the governance and life cycle. And I know you're only just launching, but what plans have you got in place to make sure that it stays looking as lovely as it does now?
Well, I would say that one of the other sort of transformation programs that's running alongside internal comms is information governance. So, for example, we are very clear on what our retention policies are for both Viva Engage and also for intranet news. And as part of that, we will also then be syncing up, for example, the retention periods between policies in SharePoint and the presentation of that information via the intranet. So that is being tackled at a strategic and a governance level, and the reporting will then drive what happens to that, whether it's it remains, whether it's archived, or whether it's completely deleted. I think one of the really good things about that is that I think normally with Viva Engage, what tends to happen is the chat is aligned with Teams chat in terms of its retention. So it can actually be, the community chat can be have a short life cycle. And I think the danger of doing that is that you lose that sense of community, because people just think, oh, it's there and it's gone. But actually what we're doing is we're aligning our community engagement with the same life cycle as a news story. We see it as important for that content to remain for the same length as a corporate news story. And that's taken a little bit of time to get over the line, but nevertheless, we are now there and we are now aligned. And I think that in itself was a really good message to say that, engagement and collaboration on tools like Viva Engage is just as important these days as pushing out news on an intranet.
Okay. Got another question that's just come through from Alistair. Rebecca, I wonder if you can answer this one for us. So to what extent do you centrally moderate what people can share on Viva Engage communities, so that contribution and comments adhere to company values and supports a positive company culture, that sort of thing?
Very light touch with that. So we have house rules, they're pinned for every community, and when you first opened up Viva Engage, you had the pop-up and you had to kind of read them and agree to them. But again, it's a common sense approach. It says, respect. That's the fundamental. So we don't actually have to go in and actively moderate much. And all of the admins of each community also have a bit of guidance to tell them that they should be engaging folk and doing that type of work. But again, very light touch. And there is a mechanism within Viva Engage to report any concerns. So if someone did see a comment that they had concerns about, they could report it from within Viva Engage. I don't believe that's ever been used though. It's something that you need to have in place. But I think the fact that we are small and we are very, very collegiate, it's probably the first thing anyone would ever tell you about working at SFC. Everyone is lovely, genuinely. So I was never at any point concerned people were going to start putting very contentious political opinions there or inappropriate language. So we have the mechanisms in place. I don't believe them ever needed to be used, but it's relatively light touch.
Great, thank you very much. And then another question for you. What were the activities that you conducted as part of your launch campaign? So you haven't quite launched your intranet yet, you're still doing the UAT, it's in beta as it were. But for Viva Engage, did you do any big activities?
So I think the first thing is we came together as a team. we looked at what existing communities, or call them communities, were on Teams, and then we talked to the sort of lead protagonists of those, and they then became the community moderators. We were very clear about what you needed to do as a moderator. So there was there's a role there that people are clear about. Each community has to have a purpose. It's not just there to wither and die. And if we see the stats, then go in that direction. There's a conversation to be had. We've had none of those yet. So we came together as a team of practitioners. We then learnt ourselves how Viva Engage was working, and we had a number of people who I would say were even better social communicators than me on that team, and they were sharing how to do video, and they were sharing how to do posts. So we used their skills. We then went into we then gave them the platform as a pilot group. So they got sort of special permission and a bit of a treat to go and start using that initially, and then we used that group to help roll it out across the organisation through a launch event on Teams, and then a number of drop-in sessions for a few weeks afterwards where people came along to learn or ask questions. And then a number of us also did targeted sessions with particular groups. So, for example, even down to doing the PAs for the directors, because we felt that the PAs needed to know how things worked, because that's the first place the directors would go, alongside training the directors and the other members of the executive and senior leadership team themselves. And I was also then able to have some fairly open and honest conversations in a safe space, with them and then with me. And we gave them some very clear and very simple call to action.
Yes, yeah, PAs are a very good one to get involved in any of these sorts of projects. I think they see and hear so much, so you can give you an awful lot of insight, whilst also then being able to help some very influential people across the business. So that's a good shout. Rebecca, I've got another question from the audience for you. Are all employees automatically added into each of your communities, or is it a join the ones you're interested in?
It's a bit of both. So we have official communities where all staff are added to. So things like we have like an all company one, for example. We've got latest news where sort of internal and external news will get pushed to, and then beyond that, it's join your own.
Great, okay. Thank you everybody for your questions. If you do have any more, then please put them in. I'm aware we're getting very close to the end. So I'm going to ask a couple more questions, and I'll keep an eye out and see if anything else comes up. I'm going to ask each of you. So Martin, let's start with you. What do you think has been the greatest challenge that you have faced in this project, and how did you overcome it?
Blimey, this is the honesty moment, isn't it? I think
ideally, yeah.
It was working with me, wasn't it?
I think my greatest joy moment was when Rebecca tapped me on the shoulder and said, "I'd love to come and help." And we've been, can I call you that? Can I call you workplace bestie ever since? And it's just been brilliant, yeah, to have Rebecca's expertise and enthusiasm. Working with me, it's just been absolutely amazing. And I think, she's rescued me on a few occasions, especially when I went on holiday recently. Yeah, thank you. I think some of the greatest challenges are around resourcing and are around alignment and coordination of activities. It might seem that having an organisation the size of 170 people is straightforward, but actually, everybody is really quite maxed out. We are a government agency. We're doing some really heavy stuff, and this is not the day job. So I think, the coordination and resourcing of projects like this is a challenge for us, as much as it's been in any other organisation that I've worked in. But we are all collegiate, and we are all very nice to each other.
Yeah, it's just tough. It's tough out there.
It's tough. Yeah. It's tough.
Yeah, thank you. And Rebecca, what is the greatest challenge do you think that you faced? If there's anything different from what Martin said, and what is your biggest joy or biggest success as well?
Oh, yeah, sorry, not very novel insight, but capacity, absolutely capacity. I know I personally have not had as much time to get hands-on with the intranet project specifically as I would have liked. Capacity, especially with reform now, we're getting more projects put on us, more quick information requests and you need to give me a breakdown of all the FTE you're going to need over the next 10 years with no information about what we're doing over the next 10 years, and you need it by tomorrow. As an actual live request I have just now.
Yeah.
So yes, I've had a lot more work put on me and everyone else I know, and at the same time have a massive staff retention issue. So not only is the work increasing, but my team has went from a team of 3 to just me. I do a lot of work with our data colleagues and IT, like core IT team. Had to elevate to the point of being on the corporate risk register, the data retention. So yes, keeping staff here, competing against the private sector means that technical staff are very hard to retain, and the work just keeps piling and piling up. So capacity, just for me personally, but also everyone else around me. So yeah, this is not the essential work, even though it's going to make all the essential work easier in the longer term. If I, as digital enablement lead, cannot find the capacity I would like to do something that's a core digital project, how are we going to get finance and HR to find time to rewrite content? It's never going to be a top priority. So that is a challenge, and it'll continue to be a challenge forever. Big successes though. I was going to say the radio, but that feels a bit trite now. Because it's a total source of joy, and the learning community as well, which I'm an admin of. No, working with Martin is fantastic because, like I say, I am a little team of 1 in the digital sphere currently. But Martin comes in as a very experienced digital experience worker, digital workplace worker. So having that ally across the other side of corporate services has been fantastic, who has the same vision and aim and kind of knows what needs to be done. It's been wonderful. And seeing it come to life is great. Seeing Viva Engage flourish has been lovely, and I really enjoyed doing the testing process for the intranet. Actually, it was good to get back to that user-centered research space.
Amazing, thank you. And as formerly a person of a team of 1, I can understand what you're saying, and I think it just goes to show how much can be achieved by teams of 1 or just a handful of people, and the work you've done so far, both of you and your teams as well, on this project. It looks fantastic, and I wish you all the luck. Luck's the wrong word. I think all of the luck that you deserve from all of the effort you've put in. So I hope your results are as good as the effort that you've put in. I think we are now at time though. Someone has just posted saying that they would like to see a follow-up webinar to hear how your intranet works out. So I think, can we maybe book you in for another one? Get back to me on that one. I won't put you on the spot right now. But
Sure, no problem at all.
It would be amazing to hear more about your intranet once it's launched and the successes you've had. So that is it, everybody. Thank you very much for coming along and listening and posting your great questions as well. We've managed to get through them all, which is brilliant. If you do want to find out more information about this project and to see what they've got coming next, then follow Martin and Rebecca on LinkedIn. Follow me on LinkedIn as well if you want to hear about general intranet-y stuff and see me post mini reviews of different software platforms. We're going to share this recording with you in the next few days. We've got a PowerPoint deck from Martin and Rebecca as well, so we'll share that alongside the recording, so you'll get some real good insights. It's a great deck. We didn't want to sit and talk through it too much today, but there's a lot of good stuff in there. You can get hold of it. And as I say, follow me on LinkedIn, follow the ClearBox account on LinkedIn as well. And that's it. Thank you very much again for your time. Everybody's come along, and thank you so much, Martin and Rebecca. And we hope to hear from you again very soon.
Thanks for having us.
All right.
Yeah, thank you very much. Been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye.